Hello, I'm Frank Epstein, founder and president of Collage New Music. It is my pleasure to introduce to you our latest online presentation entitled The Composer Speaks. The Composer Speaks is an opportunity to introduce composers directly to you. Our guest today is Joan Tower, a Grammy Award-winning composer and longtime friend of Collage. Joan is recognized as one of America's important musical voices. A performer herself, Joan brings character and intuition to her music, which is the basis for her success as a composer. Joan has a winning personality, fun-loving, with a marvelous sense of humor, all supported by a strong work ethic and a history of creating many successful compositions. In this two-part video, Joan will be interviewed by music director David Hoose. We thank you all for joining us, and we hope this experience will bring you closer to new music and the composers who write it.
One thing that occurred to me is that when we talked the last time, you were in midst composing a cello concerto. And you had said that it was quite unusual that the first couple movements went quite swimmingly. And it was surprising to you that you often found composing a very challenging endeavor. But then you got to the last movement and you felt stuck, or not, maybe not stuck, but that it was more resistant. And I'm just wondering how it's been going.
Uphill battle.
Still an uphill battle.
Yeah, everything just slowed down back to the slow pace that I'm used to. But I hang in there. I'm very persevering. But this one is giving me a lot of trouble. This last moment.
No double bar in sight.
Yeah, it's like pushing a boulder uphill. You know.
But it sounds like what you're saying is that that's standard operating procedure for you. That is.
It is.
This more resembles the way you usually work than the first few movements did.
That's right. Yeah, I'm a turtle when it comes to composing. And I know that some composers are not. They're very facile, and they've got, like Mozart, for example. I think he did 3 symphonies in 3 days or something like that. I mean,
Well, the Marriage of Figaro in what 3-4 weeks or something like that.
I mean, I hate those people.
And you can't always tell, I think, from the nature of the music.
That's right. That's right.
I think I read that Schoenberg, about whom we spoke last time, wrote the string trio, which sounds quite arduous to me, in a flash. That it just came to him, and it went very fast. But a piece like Verklärte Nacht, he really struggled over, a much earlier piece in his life. But it sounds, of course, to most people like it just must have just flowed out of him. So
I think there's a reason for that. Those differences is the time in his life, because the trio, by that time, he had developed some pretty definitive concepts about how to compose and what kinds of rows to use and what kinds of registers to use. So he had a pre-compositional map that was much more secure than he did when he was younger.
Well, so when you look back at what is it, a 4-movement concerto that you're working on? When you look back at the first 3 movements, because you told me last time that when you begin to work, you really frequently go back to the beginning and follow the discourse all the way through, so that the unfolding continues to make sense. When you look back at those first 3 movements, do they seem different than music that you found more challenging to compose, or does it seem very much in the vein of your music?
I think they're very much in the vein of what I do. I mean, because I think the struggle is actually more of a perceptual kind.
What do you mean?
Well, we all struggle with our opinions of what we do as composers. You know, it's like on Monday, I like this, right? On Tuesday, what was I thinking? I don't like this anymore. Wednesday, well, it's not so bad actually. Thursday, you know, it goes, that's one kind of up down perception. Then there's one that you like all the way through the week, it stays. And then there's one that you don't like for 3 or 4 days. You have to give it a chance. So we're stuck with our intuitions and opinions from day to day, from week to week, from month to month of what we're creating. So yeah, it's a question. I think the struggle is not a question of, it's a question of perception.
So when you look back at music that you composed over the last, what now?
60 years.
60 years.
Yeah.
Is there music of yours that you just think, what was I doing? And
Yes.
you
Oh,
would just
yes.
like to wipe that piece from your catalog?
Yeah, when performers call me and they say, we're so excited about playing this piece. And I'm like, oh, I'm glad you like it. I can't stand the piece, you know, but I've learned not to say anything. I used to when I was younger. I was very honest and very straightforward. I say, what are you playing that dumb work for? You know, I don't do that anymore because players have also a different perception.
Well, are you ever happily surprised when there's that piece that you wrote 25 years ago and you think, oh, that's really not very good, and somebody plays it and you think, oh, maybe it's better than I thought because this performance brought something alive?
That happens all the time. Yeah. I mean, I have a story of my flute quintet, which is pretty meaningful in terms of how I perceive things. I always think the piece is going to be a total disaster. And I know that I do that as a protection. It's a shield I put around me because I'm vulnerable. And so the shield says, it's okay. I understand this is not a very good piece. You know, I get it. It's fine. So I've been doing this for years and years and years and years. And even within the last 5 years, I had this flute quintet that was premiered at Juilliard with Carol Wincenz and the Juilliard Quartet in this big hall. It was her 60th birthday or something, one of her birthdays, and everybody in the world was there. It's like packed. There must have been 600 people there, and I was a wreck. I was sitting there like, I don't want to be here. I really don't want to be here, and I'm going to get out of here as fast as I can. And there was a reception afterwards, and I had to go to the reception. I just couldn't avoid it. And I thought, okay, you're going to go to the reception and you're going to get out of there after that as fast as possible. And there was this line of people waiting to congratulate me on the piece. And I thought, okay, they're here because they want to say hello to me and because I haven't seen them in a while, and you know, that kind of rationale. Really, I mean, I couldn't accept the fact that this piece actually worked. So then it had 3 more performances at Bowdoin, at Manus, Manhattan, and I can't remember all the places. And same thing happened. Different audience, people who don't know me from a hole in the wall. It's like, you know, maybe Joan, maybe this piece is not as bad as you think it is. It's a possibility. No, it's not. It is a possibility. How come so many people like it and you don't like it? You know, so I finally got around to liking the piece, but it's a perceptual problem, you see, and it goes on with older pieces, newer pieces I'm writing, and I've learned to live with my own protective shields. And I put it down all the time.
So do you know what it is you didn't or don't like about that flute quintet? Are you able to put your finger on it?
Oh, there's so many criticisms. It would take a book to write it down. I mean, no. And most of them I have deleted. And I have to let it be. It's my child. It has to grow, and it has to, and it's getting a lot of performances. And then there's another reason for that, is that flutists are major advocates of living composers.
Sure.
I tell my students that if you want your piece to be played again, write a flute piece. Yeah.
So does the music sound like you? Or does it have your voice in it, the flute quintet that you have doubts about?
I hope so.
So
I don't know what that means.
It's always an interesting question to me, because we think about, you turn the radio on and you walk in. I mean, you're in your car and you turn the radio on to the classical music station, and in 2 measures or less, you know that it's by Haydn, or it's by Mozart. I mean, those are fairly linguistically similar composers.
Right.
And
right.
it is sometimes a chord. Not necessarily what the piece is, but who it's by. And even with a composer like Stravinsky, whose music changed so much from the E-flat Symphony and Firebird all the way to Requiem Canticles, and you still hear his voice all the time.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
So I wonder if you have any idea what creates your voice. No,
because I'm too close to it. I can explain what I'm after and what I try to create, but I can't say, I have a voice. I hope I do.
Well, you clearly do, because I think the same thing that I observe about Haydn's music or Stravinsky's music is true of yours as well.
Thank you.
It has a fingerprint that you identify right away.
That's wonderful. That's a great compliment. Thank you. Because I think all of us composers, we skate around a lot of composers. We grow up with composers we're very impressed with or influenced by, and we kind of make them part of our package, of our voice. But the thing is that we can't leave it there. We have to go beyond it. And that process is so tricky that I can't even explain it. All I know is that you have to be alone.
Tell us more about that.
Well, again, it's being alone with your perceptions of what's working for you. And you have to trust those perceptions big time. Yeah.
When you doubt something that you have just written, or when you question it, a day later or 3 days later, are the questions usually about large decisions or small or minute decisions? There are no small decisions, but is it about whether it should be G sharp or G natural, or is it about the entire section that's just the wrong energy level or something like that?
I think you should be a composer. Have you done any composing lately?
Oh, I would.
Because you're asking all these deep composer questions,
Well, I'll tell you and Jacob can take this out of the whole interview, but I was trained as a composer.
See? That explains it.
But I have not written music since I was in my early 30s. So I'm 73 now. And just in this time of COVID, I've decided to try to write a piece of music. I've done lots of orchestrations and arrangements and all that kind of stuff. That's
Right.
easy. That's like eating dessert. But I'm actually trying to write a piece. And
Fantastic.
man, I got to tell you.
Well, first of all, I applaud you. You should really keep doing that because it's gonna exercise a part of your brain in music. It's gonna help you with everything else. And it is a muscle that it's like it's like a sport. It's a muscle you have to keep doing, and you just have to keep repeating and exercising the muscle of opinion, actually, and perception. That's what it is. That's what it's rotating around this muscle of perception, basically.
Well, clearly, it's a muscle that's out of shape. And I've thought often about what we read about Brahms, who apparently got up every morning and wrote counterpoint exercises. And sometimes they think, well, Brahms's music, it sounds like he wrote counterpoint exercises in a good and not so good way.
Right, right.
But man, do I wish I had been writing those counterpoint exercises all my life, because at least my brain would be thinking in those ways. I think when I'm studying a piece of music, I imagine, oh, I must be looking at this from a composer's perspective, but I clearly am not, because otherwise writing this what is now a 7-minute piece would not be giving me such trouble.
I'm sorry, I'm not sympathetic.
Oh, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Just keep going and keep hanging around it. 7 minutes is a long time. What is it for?
It's kind of for a collage ensemble, the standard Pierrot ensemble plus viola.
That's a lot of instruments. Yeah.
Well, but I think writing an orchestra piece, as time consuming as that is, in a way is easier. You have lots of colors to deal with. You have more bass instruments,
and you're comfortable with the orchestra. That's a difference. Yeah. Oh, well, good luck with that.
So what are you able at this moment to identify as the changes that have come about in your music over the years? When you look back at Breakfast Rhythms, a pretty early piece, and you look at the curve from Breakfast Rhythms to this cello concerto that you're working on, do you see a change in your language or in the rhetoric of the music or in anything that you're able to identify, or are you, as you might want to say, too close to it?
Well, I think a lot of I think a lot of the problem with composers is the confidence. It takes a lot of confidence to write music, and it's you have to also be alone with your own perceptions and opinions. No one can do it for you. You know what I mean? And that's scary because you want it to have a life. You want it to be heard first by the players. You want the player to hear this thing and respond to it. That's a whole connection that's super important to me. Because if I can't get beyond the players, I'm dead in the water, right? And having been a player for a long time, I understand their relationship to the page. That's why I think composers need to be players also, or conductors, because it gets them on the other side of the page. They become the makers, recreators, instead of the creators. And they should conduct too, because then their attitude towards conductors is very different. They should improvise. There's a whole bunch of things they should do to help them in their relationship to music. my confidence level has gone up simply because the world has helped me. The players, they play my music a lot, and I get awards every once in a while, and I think that's very confident building for somebody like me who has no confidence whatsoever. Um, that needs to be there. I think you need to have some support for your music. You can't just. I never understand how painters. There are a lot more painters, I think, than composers, and a lot of them just do their work in their studio, and they show once in a great while if they're allowed to show. I don't know how they keep going. I really don't. I
What,
need that feedback.
but yeah, I agree. It's almost a different world. But the painter finishes that abstract or that realist painting, whatever it is, and she can hold it in her hands. There it is. I can put it on my wall, or I could sell it, or I could put it in the basement, whatever. But it's a thing. And you
Right,
finish
right.
your cello concerto, and it's not yet a
That's
thing.
true. That's true.
So, I mean,
That's right.
unto itself,
That's the
it's
difference. That's a big difference.
needs a whole other layer of involvement of more people, of other people, affirmation
That's
by
right.
the flute quintet players.
Yeah, that's absolutely, you're right. I never thought of it quite that way because the reality of the painting is right there. It's right there. It's done. Whereas the music is not until it's played.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's probably more like a play. Music composition is more like a play, although there's something even. But almost anyone can read a play, but not almost anyone can read a score of Joan Towers.
Yeah, but did we talk about this? Did we talk about the difference, of notation? Did I talk to you about this? Between a play and music and architecture and dance.
So talk to us about that.
Did we talk about that?
I don't think so, but it's an interesting topic. So
It's to me, it's like big deal topic because we have this notation that is like an architectural blueprint. It says A, two beats, half note, quarter note equals 60, piano crescendo to a B. I mean, how specific can you get? You know, whereas the theater script says, I love you. And Henry says, I love you. And the director says, no, you have to understand the context of this. Yeah, I do. He's being very serious. No, you don't. No, it's not. And then there's a whole discussion about 60 different ways of saying, I love you, right? And then the dance script, they tried to develop a notation, which they have, but they don't use it except for archival purposes. The way dance is taught is by demonstration. They bring in somebody who demonstrates, either the choreographer themselves, who are former dancers, or their assistants. What do they call when they bring in an assistant? I forget that word.
repetiteur.
Yeah, somebody who, like the Martha Graham people, Balanchine people who come in and teach Balanchine's
Yeah.
dances. I forget what they're called. But anyways, it's a whole different way of bringing something to life from music. Music it is like an architectural blueprint. It's very specific, except in worlds like jazz and multicultural, electronic. Those are different worlds. I'm talking about notated classical music. Yeah.
So are you able to put your finger on, as a pianist who played so much music, are you able to identify the characteristics in a piece by someone else, not by you, that you as a player responded to,
Oh,
versus
absolutely.
the piece that seemed totally abstract and not engaging with you?
Oh yeah, because I had a whole education with that over 15 years with Da Capo. We played a lot of serialists, and very conceptual people, some of them, and we played a lot of we played other people who were more intuitive, um, and that's when I learned the difference of as a player. I remember we played this piece by Peter Maxwell Davies, and it was for Da Capo plus percussion. It was this big deal piece for this big deal concert, and we had to really do a good job. And we got Jerry Schwartz to conduct because it was a very difficult piece. And I learned the first 5 pages, which took me about 6 months. They were just black with notes, just incredibly difficult. But I was very determined and I was going to do it. And then Jerry comes in, and we were all very nervous. He was this hotshot young conductor, and so he talks to everybody except me. So I raised my hand. I said, Jerry, is there something you would like to say to me? And he said, no, I have nothing to say to you. I can't hear your part. I don't know what you're doing over there. It was an honest answer from a conductor. And I was so pissed off.
Of course.
Because I had worked so hard on that piece. I didn't bother to learn the last 3 pages. I just faked them.
So did Max Davies come to the performance?
No, he wasn't there.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what he's like. I've never met him ever, but I tell you, I would if he had come, I would have been giving him a piece of my mind.
There are those pieces that you encounter that are so challenging, either because of the blackness of the page or the complexity of the layers of rhythm or whatever. And that's all well and good. It's only annoying when the composer says, "Oh, don't worry about that. Don't worry." It's like, why did you write it if you don't care?
The notes don't really matter.
No, they don't. No.
The general feeling of it.
Right.
What?
Yeah. I can do the general feeling, which may be one of animosity.
I also learned a lot of lessons from playing and dealing with composers on the other side of the page. They would come in and coach us. Some of them knew exactly how to talk to us, and they knew exactly what they were hearing. Like if you made a mistake for whatever reasons, and they would say, did I write an E flat there? That should be an E natural. Yeah, but they did it out of their closeness to the piece. They knew how the piece went. And some of them were very kind, some of them were not so kind. But then there were these other composers who would come in and treat us like we were robots. In measure 64, the flute has a forte. Play a forte. That would turn us off so fast. Within 4 minutes, we didn't want to play this piece too much. Unless we liked it, then we would put up with a lot of that. But usually the two didn't go hand in hand.
You said that you thought that you couldn't teach composition, but did anybody teach you?
No, not really. I worked with a lot of people. I worked with Varese, Wallingford Rieger, Yusachevsky, Davidovsky. I worked with a lot of people. I learned things from them about things outside the music, but basically I had to carve my own path.
What did Varese have to say? Anything that you carry with you today?
He had nothing to say. That's harsh. He liked me because I was a woman. I was a young woman. He was a big womanizer. And at that time, it was a little more prevalent than it is now, certainly. And I had to run from him.
How much resistance did you receive as a young composer because you were a woman? You are a woman.
That I overtly, I can't say a lot, but now that I look back on that history, I see that I was like one of the few in the class or one of the few on the board, or it took me, the women's movement changed my whole point of view about that whole thing. And the history, I studied the history of women in music, and that became super important to me, because that gave me some kind of background of where I was on this loop, historical loop. And yeah, we were pretty much left out of things for a long time.
So they assumed that probably the assumption was that you were going to study composition, but then, it was going to be just a hobby for you.
Right. Yeah. Go home and have babies and clean house. Which I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Yeah, as little as possible.
So let's come back for a minute, if you don't mind, to the cello concerto that you're working on. Tell us a little bit about its dimensions. How long a piece is it going to be, or do you imagine it will be? What's its orchestration? For whom are you writing it? Those kinds of, just basic pieces of information that we'd like a window in on.
Okay. I was asked to write this piece by Peter Ugin. He's a conductor. He conducts at Yale, and he was conductor of the Toronto Symphony. He has a long resume. He also was a violinist with the Tokyo Quartet. Yeah, exactly. So for some reason or other, he likes my music. And he called me and said, I'd like to commission you for our new festival in Boulder, Colorado, to write orchestra piece of some kind. What would you like to write? I was like, oh, you're giving me, can I write a concerto? Absolutely, whatever you want. I have this cello concerto, which I don't like at all. That's between you and me. So I said, how about a cello concerto? And he said, you got it, and I've got the cellist for you, Elisa Weilerstein.
Oh, yeah.
And I know her playing, and I thought, oh my God, she's a fantastic cellist. I said, that's great. I've never ever met her. So I started this piece, and it started to just flow, and she said, I want a 25-minute piece. And I'm like, oh, that's a little long. My longest piece is 30 minutes, my concerto for orchestra. I said, how about 20? Okay, let's split the difference, 22. So I decided, actually, I don't know why, to put it into movements.
Well, you did say that most of your music is in one movement.
It's not movements, one movement. Yeah, this one is the second piece I've ever written that has movements. There are 4 movements. And that's unusual for me. I'm not sure exactly why I did it that way, but I did. And so that's going to be, I'm writing a piano reduction right now so that she can learn it ahead of time. And then I'm going to orchestrate it as soon as I finish. I'm going to orchestrate the piano reduction.
So when you're working, are you working in, let's say, an orchestra piece like this? Are you working in what we would call a short score? I mean,
yeah, well, it's
like a piano
version.
sketch,
yeah,
as it
exactly.
were.
That's the way I work always. Yeah, I play everything on the piano, orchestra or non-orchestra, because I have to. It's a way of getting close to it for me, especially in time. Time is super important to me. How long is this? What is the tempo? Where is it going? And so as a pianist, I can feel that. So that I write everything at the piano.
Do you ever record what you've written and then removed from the physical act of playing it, listen to it?
Um, no, but I do have a disc clavier here, which I can record on top of.
Oh, I
So
see.
sometimes, once in a great while, not very often, I just can't hear it enough. So I record part of it and play over it, and then I get a little closer to the complexity of it. It's a tool I used to use a lot more. I don't, not as much anymore.
You are a pencil and paper composer, right?
Yes.
Is that something you, not to keep bringing you back to teaching composition, which you say is impossible, but is that something that you confront with your
Oh, right away,
composers?
I say no computers. This took me years to figure out. The computer was getting in ways, interfering in ways that were, I couldn't get a grasp on at first. And then I started to see what was happening. They were using the computer to play their piece.
Hmm.
And there would be a lot of by accident choices, and they couldn't play it themselves. So the computer would play some incredibly complicated thing that they had no idea how to notate or anything. It took me, so now I say no computers to start with, and then we'll use the computer maybe to listen, but I want them to, and also to print out the nice notation.
Sure.
But I want them to get close to their music by hearing it, by playing it, by doing it, by living it first.
Do you get resistance?
Actually, no, not so far.
Great, great.
Well,
And so
I'm a very stern. No,
you're right, and we can tell that, of course. When, when you have your completed score of the cello concerto in your hand, do you then recopy it, or does your
Oh no, my publisher does.
your publisher
everything.
does?
Yeah,
So you're not even involved in the Sibelius finale world.
not at all. And I sort of regret that on some level, but on another level, I'm sort of happy I don't use it because it's made me much more active.
I can tell you that as a conductor, I used to write pieces out when I was trying to learn them, at least portions of the piece or things that I was having trouble remembering or learning. Just write it out in hand. And as I learned music copying program, Sibelius, I would sometimes create parts for a piece that was in public domain and there were terrible editions of that Handel piece or whatever. And I thought, well, I'll do this and I'll be able, if I'll create a good violin part that's clean, and I'll learn the piece. I don't learn the piece in the same way that I did when it was in my hand on the manuscript paper. It's a different thing.
Yeah, because you physically had to go through the motions of, which brought you closer to the page and to Haydn.
Yep. So, well, Joan, this has been a great blessing of time to get to spend with you, and we're extremely grateful for your music, first of all, and for you as a person and as a force in music today. I applaud you for your huge span of creativity and encourage you to finish your cello concerto so that, God willing and COVID willing, we will get to hear it soon.
Well, these have been such significant discussions. People don't ask me the kinds of questions that you do, David, and I do a lot of interviews. And I really appreciate the dialogue that we've had, which has made me think more about certain things. And So this has been great.
Thank you so very much.
Okay.
Please stay in touch and let me know when you finish the cello concerto.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Lots of
Bye-bye.
love.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Joan Tower composed Noon Dance in 1982 for Collage New Music. Much of her best-known music is for large orchestra, vital, energetic music, but her chamber music as well shows many of the same characteristics, including this piece. Ms. Tower says that the title, Noon Dance, certainly implies the kind of dancing that is included in the piece, but it also suggests something about how close chamber music is to dancing, how the players move with each other. Noon Dance is in one movement and is about 16 minutes long.